roll call. Sumner contacted me. He couldn't make it. He's out of town and evidently he's having technical difficulties too. So he's not going to be here today. Everybody else is here. Any revisions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes of July 6th? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And item 5 is the consensus on design flood elevation. When we last met, we had talked about using elevation 11 as our design flood elevation, not for the flood itself, but design for mitigation purposes. And then it was pointed out that that was for elevation or AE FEMA flood map AE7, and that would change depending where you were on the flood map. You could be 8 or 9 or whatever. So the better way to do it is to have it adjust by the flood map designation that the property is in. And what I was suggesting, can we bring up the GHD thing I think we showed last time?
You going back to the last meeting?
I sent you an email with the things for today's.
Did that have the old stuff in too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Was
This one right here?
last night? Yeah. Okay.
okay.
See the way they did it. We came to approximately the same elevation from a different direction. See how they projected it. That they ended up being between 10.6 and 11.6 for FEMA location 7, AE7. So I thought if we would accept this approach, since it was so close to what we had determined previously, to be uniform with what's being done by GHD and what we're doing, that we could use this formula to set the height. And I'd suggest we could either use 2 or 3. They have 2 different, one for slab elevations and one for critical equipment. I think if we use the critical equipment, would bring us about there.
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit higher than the 11, but more in line with what they were doing. So I don't know how everybody feels about that, but I think that's a way to be more accurate in.
So you're saying the 8.6 plus 3 in this case.
Yes,
Okay. And I think that has the advantage of being calculated by representative organization rather than people
Yeah,
sitting around the
we had
table.
assumed things, and this is something that's been said.
And in this area, generally the 500-year floodplain is about 2 feet higher. So
So we'd be in line with that too. that
yeah,
you're
it's
saying.
actually 1.6, 1.8 feet. So call that 2.
Right.
But I think the 3 is safe if it doesn't cost BPW a lot. I mean, you're building in a place.
We're still where we were before, basically within inches.
a foot
Basically.
higher, which I don't think adds much, given the fact that you're building a pump station.
Well, again, this one would have been 11.6 at 7.
Yeah,
So there was 6 inches higher than what we were estimating at 11. Now we have other people here that are familiar with that too. So
What we've been doing is the 18 inches of freeboard plus the 1.38, so we're roughly in the 32 to 35 inch range. For instance, like the pump station at Waterfront Preserve, the pump station at Hauling Cove, the pump station at Tower Hill, those are all set at that roughly 3 feet above the floodplain elevation.
Okay,
But that's what we've been doing only because the city had adopted the mid-level projection and then we added freeboard on top of that.
do you think
Yeah,
this
this
is
is-
a reasonable approach?
I mean, I think this is even more stringent
Conservative.
than what we've been using. I think the key is gonna come down to what you define as critical equipment. Because, pump stations you can set up because they're usually isolated, but things that are in somebody's backyard or right down the middle of the road, obviously you can't raise it to that level, but maybe they're not considered critical either.
Well, we could adopt their two conditions like they did. They had the structural slabs would be the non-critical, and then the critical would be free. If you follow their reasoning.
Well, I kind of liked your thought process that everything that the board is gonna wanna protect is critical equipment. Not, I don't think you need to lower it to structural slab and building thresholds.
Because, Brett, I thought FEMA actually had defined broadly critical infrastructure. It's, life, health, safety. So, it's basically water, sewer, electric. I mean, it's what we do. Yeah.
Like police station. fire
Yeah,
station.
yeah, and then, yeah.
Those-
I'm sorry, but these gentlemen introduced themselves, or did you introduce them? Does
No,
everybody know who they are? Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Charlie Brown with GMB, and I've been the board's engineer for 30 years, and this is Brent Jeff, he's from GMB as well, and he's a certified climate professional as well as a certified floodplain now. And he
Oh,
professional.
lots of luck.
He's got no.
and Charlie's not only our engineer, as many people, he's the city's engineer also. He does the planning commission, he does the plan reviews. So, Charlie is the common thread. His brain, we're going to eventually upload to a.
Download it somewhere.
My wife said she wanted to dissect it, but
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
What they show is freeboard. Are they saying they would like the freeboard on top of the design flood elevation in 2050? Are they saying if you provide 2 feet of freeboard over the 2015 FEMA, you're okay?
No, they're the first.
The additional
Yeah,
on top
it's
of
free,
the
it's
2050.
free,
Okay,
it's the same
I just
definition.
want to make
we
sure I
use
was,
everywhere. It's
because
added,
it doesn't necessarily, it just says freeboard.
Okay,
I
yeah.
just wanted to make sure.
that's an important point, because that would take that 8.64 to 11.64.
Right.
Which is actually 4.64 above the flood elevation, whereas right now, like I said, we're like 3 feet.
and part of the reason
So-
is that this is using the upper level curve also,
Oh, is it?
as
Yeah.
opposed to the city using the mid-level.
And as will advise, as the FEMA maps get better, some of the elevations are actually going down. So if you go back to the historic, I think it's 94 map, the wastewater treatment plant is in elevation 9. So,
Oh, really?
and it's gone down to 7 now.
And Tom,
Because the maps have gotten better, and as we've discussed before, even Jonas is the highest recorded one out, at the buoy that we can define out, in the bay. That still wasn't at elevation 7.
I don't think that 1.38 stuff, the worst case scenario, I think that.
That's the 50%.
That one, I would, yeah.
Yeah.
That
But the
probably
difference
was.
comes in the freeboard, where we're using 18
Oh.
inches, they're using 2.
Yeah.
You're right, actually, that was exact. So they came at it from one angle and we had come
You
from the
guys
other,
are using.
yeah.
higher.
right.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be,
Basically the same
Yeah.
result. Okay,
no, you're right, Charles.
all right, if,
And that's also kind of following, so Maryland has this crab model, Chesapeake resilient something building. They're using 3 feet for any critical infrastructure that it has a public component to it over $500,000. So basically, anything that you're constructing that's a public facility, municipal building. they're doing the 3 feet of freeboard.
Above the backplane.
All right, well, if that's acceptable to everybody, then that'll be we'll pass on to the board. Talk to them. It'd be interesting to see, do you know what the city is doing at this point on this?
No, I'd have to look into
Okay.
it. No, not off the top of my head.
So we want to coordinate, we want to coordinate everything we're doing with them
Sure.
eventually. Probably
I'll make note of that.
Couple
I'll check in with
a
you.
couple months away from sitting down with
Yeah,
you.
that was why I
City.
had asked at the joint meeting, that question on where the city's
Right.
at.
So at this point, we're saying 11.6 or.
Yes,
or the-
at that, at 7,
At that point.
AE7, yeah, but it'll change based on the FEMA location.
And just for the committee's thoughts, just, again, with the critical equipment, I can see like questions coming up about, like, say there's an evacuation route that's a designated evacuation route, that somebody's gonna define that as critical. But to raise it 4.64 feet above the floodplain might create all kinds of other issues, so I don't know, I feel like we need to take it, I hate to say this, one project at a time and see what we can do on each one. And in most cases, we try to do this, but in some cases, we could just be too impractical to do it right now.
Evacuation routes are not state roads.
I was gonna say the potential workaround in that is critical equipment or critical facility. That a road is not considered. A road doesn't get a finished floor elevation on
I
it
mean,
or a flood certain.
New Road,
Savannah.
Savannah, Kings are all state
I
roads.
mean, I was just bringing that.
But I mean, it's a good point, because we talked about last time, the fact that you can't necessarily elevate the roads, I mean, unless you elevate the town. But, so from an evacuation route perspective,
I was-
the
I
feeder
was
roads
thinking,
are a
like,
different story, but
Have you been on Route 54 between Fenwick Island and
Southville.
Selbyville?
oh, yeah.
That section that they bridged closer to Fenwick Island, but they created like service roads so that all the businesses and every residents on each side could be accessed. I see that as a possibility, but that's a lot of work and a lot of input that everybody needs to put. I'm thinking mostly about like the far side of the Savannah Road Bridge, where it floods a lot of times. Like, I feel like that could be bridged and the commercial areas could be accessed. It's just a lot of effort and coordination. Hold on.
Yeah, it seems like they'll.
They're not big bridges. They're not like this. They're just up.
Yeah.
But here, we're not necessarily concerned with Del. How you interface. Correct, we're interested in
Our facilities themselves. The city might be more interested
the
than
cities.
we are.
We have BPW's facilities. So.
We have Robin's list of pumping stations and their FEMA elevation. They're the various pumping stations we have. And next to it has the designation, the flood designation from FEMA.
What I did is I took the map that Josh had done, showing, it's an older map, so some of the lift stations may not be on there. All the locations of the lift stations on the map. And what I did is I just took and compared it to the Delaware flood planning tool and just popped on the properties. And that's what came up. So lift station 74, which is in Cape Shores, which is close to the state park, is an AE. Again, that's would be over the, which GSD said 7, so that number would be 12 something.
Yeah.
If you used all the calculations. Most of them, there's a 9 there. The Denrec one, that's a 9.
Where's that one?
That's all the way at the end of where the Denrec building, where the pier is at, the
Oh,
ramp.
that direction. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's 9.
9, so that would be 2 foot higher than what was shown on the GHD report.
Okay.
So that puts you up at 13.
Yeah.
At 6.4. Some of those ones, the X's are the ones that are not in the 100-year flood zone. So there is no base flood elevation on all the X zones. That might be something that needs to be looked at. Are we gonna set a base for all those ones in X? Because they don't have a number assigned to them by FEMA. Also, some of the ones, it's like pump station 4. The location of pump station 4 is technically not in the flood zone. Part of the parcel is, but it's not.
So we should go back and look at all of them, see where they are and.
Correct, because that's like the Tower Hill one. I couldn't get an exact location for the Tower Hill one. But the lot is very close to a flood zone. So we'd have to verify that X. I just put X there because I didn't think it was. Lift station 10 was the same way, showing AE7. But some of it might not be, and that might not be, but if we can use just a partial, then it'll be AE7.
We ought to go back and look at that and try to set things that we feel. we can set.
Yeah, the X, again, there's nothing to go by, so we're gonna have to set a number if we're worried about.
Nothing to go by in that format.
Yeah, there's not a base flood elevation to start off with.
Yeah. So you pick,
You could just say,
We have to
okay,
assume something.
Yeah.
Yeah, something reasonable.
Well, would it be as simple as transferring a datum across the town? So I mean, if we're working to elevation 11.6, let's say, as 7, we could look at any other thing that's outside the floodplain and see whether it's less than 11.6.
We could shoot all those elevations if we don't have them, so.
Charlie, wouldn't that work? I mean, or approximation, I mean, granted, it doesn't get the topography, but
That's the blanket
Yeah.
solutions to it, because, the elevation may already be 12, it may be 8.5.
right,
But if you build to the 11.6,
Yeah.
in theory, knock on wood, you should be good, because if you're in the X now, the floodplain is going to creep. It may not creep that much. As I stated before, it went from 9 to 7. Who knows? The 7 may go waterward.
Well, we
well,
can set them all on elevation. Just
Yeah, I mean, just
assume
say
that
a
elevation.
minimum elevation
So
of,
that's what you're saying, right?
I would think
Yeah.
you do that.
That's- If we could,
And you've
we
got
could
a couple-
revise that with their elevations. We don't already have them. we
Yeah.
should.
Mhm. Yeah. All the paper documents, I made copies, I made,
Yep.
if everybody wants them.
and in theory, that would be conservative because, I mean, there are areas
Each get a
where
set, yeah.
if the elevation rises to 15 feet and everything is behind that, you basically have an earthen
Right.
berm.
Right.
However, if there's an undulation, it's all gonna flood
Yeah.
through. So, it's
Okay, what
probably the most.
What if you had something that, so we said, get the data that. And, and it happens to be, the ground is 15,
and you're fine.
Yeah.
fine, it's.
Don't worry about it.
With a
Station so and so, it's not a
minimum
problem.
We
Elevation.
can leave the
of-
X there for all purposes.
You can say a minimum elevation of 10.6, because there are some elevation 6s. Elevation, minimum elevation of 10.6 or a foot above adjacent grade.
Okay.
Jason, great, because then you don't get any.
Yeah, it's either, so if you're already up at 15, then you've got that foot above it for localized inundation.
Yeah, that's
If it rains hard.
That's what we've been doing, 18 inches of freeboard. Just 18, wherever it is, it's 18 inches of freeboard buffer.
But with this, some of these. you can-
All right, I think we've captured that.
Yeah, and on the second
You
page
good
of
with
that is more of the lift stations, the well fields and all that.
We never would have been at this point in the discussion, some of them.
Is the substation, is that the tie-in point or is that our substation on Schley?
No, that's the, Span Road.
So that's the metering
Yeah,
tie
the meet,
with
yeah,
DP&L.
correct, yeah.
But what we have, do we have the,
You were gonna ask about the elevation of. You're gonna ask about the substation, like our substation?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the electric offices and stuff like that, I think is where. That's the layout in it.
That's like, we had, yeah, we had to clarify that.
Yeah. I just put that on there because that's what was on the map. We can change it to verify. We can put addresses on there if you want. To give a.
It probably helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Again, I just put that together and just more just to get a reference on what was in the floodplain, what was not, and how the X's were going to be determined.
because that actually probably does fall. I think Schley is about 10 feet.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't,
Because my house is 13 feet grade and it drops about 3 feet down.
does it
Yeah.
that much?
Which would mean that the substation, if we set a minimum elevation
10.
is,
Well, again, we could actually shoot all of them, so we have the actual elevations. So add the elevations and addresses of all better description. All right. So if we have that, can we agree on that then? And we'll make that, on the record as one of our key elements. So
The 11.5 feet or 11.6, or do we round up to 12 or
I think we're going with 11.6.
11.6?
Yeah, we'll use that same calculation. But for critical, because Charlie
this way
mentioned
that
most of it.
without changing everything
Yeah.
else, it's never gonna stay as an absolute
Yeah.
number.
Okay.
As Charlie mentioned, most of our things that we're talking about are critical, so. Okay. Brent. You're on. We're what we're really looking for, we've had the elevation, we have, the other things that we've identified for this. But we were, last meeting, we were kind of fishing for the wind.
Okay. Do you
So,
want the wind or you want?
well, we'd like the whole story about.
Okay,
About, increase in frequency as well as the wind. But for the flooding, I think we're pretty much got that
okay.
because of this.
All right.
But can give us a short discussion on that.
On the wind load, I would advise utilizing whatever building code is current.
Which is now, what, did you say 120?
It should be 120 on
Yeah.
on what the city has adopted now. I think the new one maybe in 2021 went to 130, but I'm not sure.
Which version of the code?
I think the concern about that is because they were using the 2012
12.
building codes. Basically took us out of the hurricane spot, and I think it's only 100 in the 2012. I think that's what the city adopted.
We didn't, weren't they considering stepping it up to like 18 or
They're looking to go to 21.
21?
Yeah, that's, I think John's doing that now, trying to,
What would that be, you know, in terms of?
It's either 120 or
yeah, I think it's at 130, I think.
Yeah.
But I think.
I think they kicked it from 18 to 21. I think they went from 120 to 130 because of sand.
I guess the question is, going forward, since the storms are more intense, are those winds going to go in 2050? Are they going to increase also?
I don't know if we're going through a transition period with intensities or we're in the new norm. One thing, from what I know now, currently today, we are physically impossible to get a Cat 5 storm. Just because of the way the water temp, the current, the land mass and everything, it stops at like mid North Carolina where Cat 5 can actually hit.
Now, is that anticipated to change?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
And
because a lot depends
and
on
that's not-
how the Gulfstream shifts. and-
Right, and the Gulf Stream, I think, would have to go up probably 8 degrees for that line to migrate. I mean, a lot of it has to do with land mass and the shape, so we've got the Hook in North Carolina, we've got the Chesapeake and the Delaware coming in, so it's a completely different interaction with it.
So now we're rated for Cat 4.
So
Three,
we can physically get a Cat 4. I don't think anybody north of Florida's got it. So, not to say it can't happen. But, you know, when you're talking hurricanes, you're talking an act of God. You know, that sort of thing. If they're going to 130, typically, as engineers, we use safety factors of 2.2 on structural stuff anyway. The 130, it'll stand there with its chest out. For the most part.
so most of what I've read so far on the probability is that there may be an increase in intensity, but that's not really, it's more the frequency.
Right.
That is definitely going up. Or,
So
It's
if you get
predictable.
one this Monday, you get one next Monday, you get
Yeah.
one the following Monday, it really doesn't fatigue. It's still rated. It's not like, you know, you're taking a notch out every time you hit 100 miles an hour. Oh, well, it's worn out now. I mean, there's natural fatigue over 100 years, but it doesn't take notches out of it.
So were you checking to see if what the wind designation is now?
But it's in the residential code is what the draft is, and it says wind speed of 100 miles an hour.
2012.
That's the 2012
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
And your recommendation is to use the newest one.
But they're looking at adopting the new code, so that's gonna come.
2021 in the residential code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For wind.
That's gonna
wind
be
speed.
130.
I believe it's one.
I-
It's at least 120. It's been 120 for a while.
I don't know how we end up dropping in 2012 that the ICC said we were outside because he was 120.
Yeah.
I don't have AIA on my name.
Because it was,
Architect,
it was AB.
but I do know
IBC,
there are
and
architects who've been designing buildings around 20 miles an hour.
Yeah, we've been doing 120, 150 in Ocean City.
You think?
I want to tell you, send in Lewes.
but because it's funny, because if you go, I mean, the 2003 code had 120 on the beach and 110 on the mainland. And that was constant until, and it might have been the 2012 code when it dropped,
Yeah.
which made no
Also,
sense.
it went from IBC to IBC and ICC.
Yes,
So
yes.
people were, it was fun trying to remember which one you were in, because you would work in Ocean City and it was one, Worcester County was another, Fenwick was another, and it was just a mess. Now everybody's kind of consistent from 2018 on. Everybody's kind of on the same page, so it's not a scratch your head and try to figure out what you're doing.
So
And so,
And most of these people there, not to cut you off, but most of these people that are designing things have been designing for 120. Anyway, they don't dumb it down and go, oh, well, I got 20 miles an hour extra. I can cut corners. You know, the Hilti straps and the Hurricane straps and everything are rated at 120 to 150. They're putting them in anyway.
And just so you know, I get confused sometimes, but where I think you're looking to put the battery, that taller structure beside the really old water plant. The city had a study done by Greenhorn and Marrow 25 years ago, and it identified that as a critical facility that was not up to hurricane force winds. So the city and the board went in and put all these hurricane straps in there to get it up to 100.
So that one is,
Yeah, but I'm just saying, that's what we used as our guide was the 120 back then.
going forward, is there any need to go to 130? And we want to be conservative. We're trying to be conservative. So
I don't know how much you're
I don't-
actually gaining by that little bit. If you get to 121, you might as well be at 150.
But you turn around and just say whatever that's just the code says, just in general. So we're not every time having to
It's just like the FEMA map. If ICC gets updated and if you go to 140, then you're following.
But I don't think we want buildings being designed.
No,
No.
no.
Minimum one.
Yeah.
And well, that's what I'm saying. Is most people around here are designing to 120 anyway. You're getting that. Call it value. You're getting the 120.
So you feel comfortable planning forward for 2050, that's where we're designing. Staying with 120.
I'm comfortable following whatever the ICC says. I can't, as much as I want to predict the future, I can't tell you we're not going to get 15 hurricanes a year erected. Can't tell you we're getting 0.
Well, then it's on the number is. That's just.
Yes.
Well, I mean, if you follow the city, new code for the city and stay with it. And there's a safety factor in there. You're gonna be current. You know, if there's going forward. I mean, I don't know what the worst winds ever were. I think Hurricane Andrew was like 60%. Florida. You know, can't really build 150 gets you pretty close to withstanding that.
120 is going to
Yeah,
uncover basically everything.
yeah, I think you're fine just staying with the city.
Just stay with the city, not
And
not try to put it into our recommendation.
I can't confirm this, but I believe New Jersey was built at 20. And the majority of their damage was from water.
What are the ramifications of saying 130?
More expensive construction, making everything more.
No, I'm sorry, I thought, I just heard him say that straps are, they put in to meet 100 are gonna.
So around here, almost everything's 120, so the straps
120.
meet 120. So if you go to 130,
That's a different piece of
it
equipment.
potentially is a different strap supply.
Okay.
Getting them around here and everything, it's hard to say.
But it also, I mean, the infrastructure we're building isn't wood frame, you talk about concrete buildings and that's, an engineered structure then. So,
We're still talking about BPW infrastructure.
Right. yeah, because we have no jurisdiction over what
And
goes on with the
in
residential.
the city, and then if we were talking about that, you're only talking about new construction to go to the new standards of 2021. You're not talking about retrofitting.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't think of any place I've ever heard that has ever gone back and retrofitted for wind loads. That's something you do after the
Yeah.
fact. Seismic is a different story, but wind,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's not even necessarily cost effective to do that.
But to your point, you're looking at the BPW infrastructure, most of it's gonna be concrete buildings. It's not gonna be wooden structures. And so you're building to that in this question, right?
And so Charlie, when they upgraded well, first of all, if we put batteries in, more than likely that building will get demolished. Seems to be the most cost-effective solution, but
I love that though. Just saying.
Not that I think this committee, but
He's sentimental.
that's in the historic district. And that building was built in 1901.
no, I'm not talking about that portion. I'm talking about the new old power plant.
Just one, yeah.
The one next, to it, the one next to it.
Back when we did that work, we still had the generators in there.
Yes, well, the generators were there until,
Yeah, I remember.
I mean, no, we're not, but strapping is one thing, but I mean, is the roof in that building from an uplift perspective?
Yeah, it was all addressed.
Yeah.
It was all addressed. Yeah, that's where those new garage doors came in. They're all hurricane rated. Did all that. I remember it clearly. Sad to see it go, but
Sentimental. Charlie, I tell you what, we'll save a block.
We'll have a wake over there.
Well, second one, we'll do New Orleans.
So it sounds like we're okay with just accepting the cities and not having to put something heavier in,
Well, rather than cities, I mean, to accept,
building code, the city building code for
Yeah.
structures.
Yeah.
We'll just use that.
but, as Austin pointed out, one of the things that the building code doesn't really cover this type of infrastructure. So it's great, the tables and everything in section 2 of it that give you these things, but we're not actually following the building code. Correct?
I mean, I would say, isn't the answer the building code, but with a minimum of 120 mile an hour? Because
Yeah.
minimum right now is
100.
100, yeah, so we don't want to build to 100, we want to build to a minimum.
And isn't the building code the minimum you have to build to, not the maximum?
Oh, yeah.
So if you build extra resiliency in there for the winds, then
Mhm.
you're still within the building code, because that's the minimum you have to build to, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, just so I,
Not that it changes a lot, it's just,
Yeah.
it just sometimes makes it easier when you reference a manual.
Mhm.
So you're not every year or every 2 years going back and saying, oh, now, we gotta put it in.
Yeah.
Just say, this is what it is, and, but again, right now, the catch is, right now, we're at 100. So do you say minimum, as long as,
Minimum
yeah,
120 and.
And they'll probably catch
And
up.
then-
but up to the current, yeah.
and
Yeah,
then
Presumably, and really, I think you want to do that, because presumably the code, IBC, ICC, they're doing all the homework
Mhm,
to
yeah.
determine what these ratings should
Yeah,
be.
they haven't getting to that number like.
Well, and in the code, I mean, you guys, it's, you talk about a wind speed, but there's an exposure height component, and they provide amplification. And the wind speed is actually for, a town like Lewes. But it's not appropriate for like the first beachfront house on the bay, because you have direct exposure. Or if you build up, the water tower. The wind speeds for the water tower actually are much higher. Sure.
Yeah, you've got a chart in there that you're gonna
Yeah.
do the calculation.
All the more reason to defer to the code.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about wind speeds, are you talking gusts or are you talking constant?
So there's a full. In the building code, there's a full blown definition of wind load. So it's
Wind
not
load.
necessarily speed, but it's a load that's sustained over a certain amount of time. Certain direction over a certain area of the building to run the calculation. Make sure that you got it covered.
As I remember, it's the 3-second gust that sets the base for all this stuff. So, it's gotta be,
Are the control panels considered a part of the structure? I'm using Tower Hill as an example.
Those are sitting outside.
And it's long, it's thin.
Yeah.
So it's 5 foot long by 5
Got
foot
some
high.
frontage, yeah,
Yeah,
I think so, yeah, I think it would need to be considered. I would consider it as an engineer.
well, and that's where, that was the point that I was trying to make, that, Austin brought up was, I mean, the IRC doesn't actually have jurisdiction over these things. We can defer to it, and I fully endorse that. But the IRC doesn't apply to engineered type things, control panels, water towers. I mean, that's,
sure.
Should the wording be,
So I think that's where the IBC scooped them off. The IBC brought that in. There were some bifurcated areas that they went residential and then building for their public facilities, which is also if you're designing a pump station that's supposed to be turned over, the pump station was built under a completely different code than the rest of the subdivision was. Or buildings in there and everything, it is nightmare. IBC said, look, I got this, I'll take care of you.
So it sounds like we're saying it's city's building code or 120, whichever's higher. So, getting
Yeah.
so
I'll get a date for you when they think they're.
Yeah.
adopt that.
And I think at the
Good.
end of the day, if New Jersey taught us nothing, it's that the water's the bigger danger than the wind.
But Robin, didn't you say they're about to change it to 130?
The city, for the 2021 code
Right,
has changed back. I think the 18 code even raised it up past 100.
yeah.
I think it was 120. Now I think the 21 it is 130.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's.
And
120 or-
yeah, and the city's in the process of reviewing whether they want to move up from the 2012 codes to the 2021 codes.
why were they going to 130? Not felt that's needed. Where's the 130?
Factor. And like I said, they have 2 years to update. They did all this redevelopment.
Josh was researching water tower. Did he ever get any definitive information on what the wind load designs on that was?
No. It's a long and winding story. You need it? No. Anyway, it was built in 1952, so it's 70 years old. Blame me if you want, but I remember seeing an 8.5 by 11 sheet from Pitt Des Moines, PDM, the tank manufacturer. This was 25 years ago. And I'm just kicking myself. I can't put my hands on it. I'm actually still looking for it. I think I might know a couple files where it still might be. But even that plan didn't have like a wind rating on it. Our problem is, we might be able to get some sense of what the footers are at the base of each of the 5 legs and what the foundation ring looks like, because they're all interconnected.
Mhm.
But what's going on with the piles? What are the piles? Piles probably go down, I don't know, 25, 30 feet at least. So when I talked to my structural engineer, Josh and I, he's like, well, we could test pit to see what exactly the foundation concrete looks like at the rings and at the footers. Expose the pile, and poke at it to see what kind of condition it is. His point was, it's already stood up to whatever the highest amount of wind that's come across Lewes in the last 70 years. But to follow up on that, each wind event causes the concrete and the piles
Stress.
to minute, to stress a little bit. So what it is now may or may not be less than what it was in 1952. So that's the long and winding story of telling you that. I don't have a good answer for you just yet.
Okay.
Plus, we submitted, we had to basically sign off to submit to get the records from Pitt Des Moines. Is a 50-50 shot. They were either in a fire or they weren't in a fire.
Not only fire, there was a flood,
Yeah,
fire and a flood.
Locust.
Yeah.
Did the flood put out the fire?
Like, oh,
So you have to protect the records too.
Yeah.
so the good news is, if the old adage goes, they don't build them like they used to. Most of the things that you see back then, the footers were oversized. We got good at engineering, we got good at efficiency, and the footers got smaller, and they're built for 100. Or 100, or whatever. So more than likely, an oversized footing from 70 years ago is
Yeah.
substantial enough. Plus, these guys are building water towers in Tornado Alley. Those things don't go down.
Yeah, so keep this in
So you
mind.
have at least that comfort and peace of mind.
Get ready to build new, right?
Right.
So we're gonna be working with Chicago Bridge and Iron or another tank manufacturer. And we're gonna get them involved. And we're going through this process. Hey, what do you think about our
Yeah.
existing thing? So
Good.
we're gonna do that.
Oh.
Let's try to get some sense.
Yeah, but you're pretty comfortable.
Yeah, we're
I-
comfortable.
wasn't there a comment that was built to 100 at some point? Was that mentioned in an earlier discussion?
Well-
I just,
90. I
I've heard
think
so many numbers. over.
90 was what we said because
Yeah.
that was like the
Maybe that's what it
minimum
was.
of anything that we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
all right, well,
So we'll keep.
maybe you'll find that sheet.
I'm gonna find.
I'm
it, and it's not
surprised.
gonna be any help.
I wouldn't have
It's
remembered.
gonna-
I wouldn't
it's gonna
have-
be nice to have.
It's chiseled in stone, Charlie.
We're gonna put it on my block.
So I guess that really takes care of 6 and 7 in our thing. So the item 8, we talked also last time about doing a plan, and I did put together, is that in that last, should be the last sheet of that. Right? That, give me a packet. I thought I brought my packet, but I ran out of the house. in a hurry. Yes. You guys have one? You do nothing? Couple over there. Well, the last sheet's just about items you might need for a, I call it notes for a mitigation plan. So, and some of this was, I was at the APPA conference, American Public Power Association, in June. And this was one of the workshops I went to. It really sounded good, like by the cover, but it was basically talking about FEMA programs, HUD programs, and the paperwork that's needed to do it. But they did mention mitigation plan, and so some of these items are programmed. This is still good to have, because one of the things as part of the mitigation planning process, we should be really familiar with this and be prepared for it, so that when the time comes, we understand the paperwork and how you handle it and treat it. I'm sure Charlie knows very well that you really have to keep good records about how you hired contractors, and you still have to go out for bid for things. But it talks about lining up contractors ahead of time, getting agreements with people to cover your butt for mutual aid agreements, so forth. And I think we're pretty good with that, aren't we, Austin?
We can always button it up, but little by little, we're adding.
So, with sewer and water, we got the county. Do you know whether the new county agreement, would that apply as emergency response to? There's no comment directly about that in the agreement, but I assume if there was a disaster, we could apply that. I think they're gonna be using it too, but I
Yes,
assume that would be,
it's mutual, it goes both ways, and
Okay.
it doesn't define emergency, but it uses emergency, so I think it's broad in the aspect of we could call on them.
It opens up the question to me that Austin and I've been talking about a little bit, like everything else, but. Sussex County has an on-call arrangement with George and Lynch.
yes,
They update every 2 years, I think it is. And we've been talking about doing that too. So that we don't get like fly-by-night contractors on.
Doing it-
Really important
doing
projects.
it just for the city you're talking about?
Yeah,
What are you talking?
Well, we've been talking. I've been talking to Austin, and I think I mentioned it to Anne Marie as well. But so you secure a really good contractor, like say Jordan Lynch or Teal, for example, to do our projects. You do have to follow the rules of that book right there
Yeah.
to make sure that it's, meets the bidding requirements of the state.
And record keeping and all that kind of stuff.
In terms of this discussion, I think it helps some that if you have somebody on call, that they're gonna be on call for you in the case of a disaster too.
Well, I think that was the question I was just having with Austin. I think our new agreement covers that
With Sussex County.
with Sussex County. Have you read that agreement yet? You should have a copy.
No, I haven't.
Yeah,
it's on the packet.
Yeah, that's just because I haven't gotten to it.
Okay.
Yeah,
It covers us in emergency situations, but it doesn't, there's two ways to look at it. One is from a T and M perspective. time material. If it's a bid out contract, it's beneficial to have it there. So if it's a more of a plan, it could fall under emergency too. But under the Sussex County agreement, basically, if we have a situation where, let's say, we have a failing pump station or something happens, we could call on the county, who would then call on Georgia Lynch or
Okay, good.
JJID,
Great.
depending on who it is.
Yeah.
And then we take the benefit. But I will tell you is that Sussex County is not the only one that has the arrangement of a T&M with a large scale contractor. Ocean City also has something very similar,
Yeah.
and it is in fact with Georgia Lynch, for example.
That's the problem, is like, then Jordan Lynch gets hit with all these requests at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hurricane.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that gets pointed out in all these APPA conferences and such, is that hurricanes and stuff like that are regional, they're not local. And, you know, everyone's going after the same companies, and we're worse than most. I mean, the Delmarva is worse than most places because we're isolated.
So going down this list, you know, we're according to what's in this manual and common sense, should have somebody heading up the emergency plan, which would, in our case, be the general manager. And then we should update our coordination with the city, of course. I mean, I guess I'm starting with Sussex County. Oh, the city, I'm sorry.
Cities for
City,
expenses.
Does the city have a sitting emergency planning committee?
I need to find that out, you know.
There is one.
I'm sure, you know, so I'm new enough not to know, not to know that I don't know stuff yet.
It's like an umbrella policy. It covers, it blankets the Board of Public Works. Like we have a portion of it within the ERP that exists within the city.
No, I mean a committee, not
No,
a plan.
it would fall under the mitigation, I would think.
They have a mitigation that meets.
Yeah, because it's,
Pretty
I mean, Chatham is the one that.
Typically, Chatham
Right.
gives an update.
And I know that they're working with the library as the alternate site for moving.
So we,
Because that's a federally defined term, local emergency planning committee under CERCLA and,
who sits on that?
yeah, that's.
A
what
lot of people, the mayor runs it,
Emery's on it.
and there's people from BB, I'm on it. We used to have the races, and radio operators, but I don't think they're on there anymore.
No.
Adam's on there. We used to have the guy from Delaware Forest. You remember him? Was it? He's always
Fire department's on there.
Yeah, he comes and goes for the,
Yeah, the burn. He was always getting us funding for the burning of the nineties. There's pretty good cross section of people. I'm missing some. I can't remember.
Austin.
University of Delaware,
Crossroads on.
Yeah.
University of Delaware, building official, maintenance department, the planner, BB, Sea Grant, University of Delaware.
Yeah.
What
Austin,
about SPI?
is
Are
there
they
any-
on?
is there any need for us to have a committee of our own? I mean, we'd still be on there, we need to assist you. So that we know that all our, like coordinating of with staff and things like this, that we're kept up to date, or are you comfortable doing it all?
Between Robin and I, and
Okay.
between you and Tom, I think we should be fine
Okay,
to update it and bring it back. Ultimately, take it back to the city.
Yeah, because I think I thought one of the things that we found that was kind of a shortfall is that, you know, we participate in the cities and the work, the tabletops. But we really didn't have one that integrated like the operator of the wastewater treatment facility and how we would do those type of things.
Isolating circuits, shutting
Yeah.
pump stations off.
we may want to put that, actually create it in writing, so we know who those people are, because right now, you're right, we're probably okay, because we know who. It'd be nice to memorialize that. Keep a list of the people that are supposed to be on it, maybe meet a couple times a year to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, because the last point that wasn't brought up, that is becoming a big thing in the industry of preemptive isolation of circuits. so that they can be restored quicker and
I
not
read
fail.
about that, yeah.
I mean, whether it's California with wildfires and such, or coastal communities where you don't want everything to be inundated with salt water while it's in.
Yes.
So we basically have a subcommittee of the city's organization. He would still be the coordinator, of course. But we would have our own people lined up. So we knew who it would be and know what each assignment for everybody would be, kind of formalize things rather than just knowing that we could do it.
Is there anyone from the pharma plant on the committee?
SPI.
Yeah.
Mhm. No, if it was anybody, I figured it would be Mike Tappan, who runs all the facility, runs the entire facility.
Is he
Not
on,
like
is he on the city?
He's on the maintenance side.
Yes, I don't remember SPI being at either any of the tabletops we've done.
Yeah, that's
Neither is the DRBA.
Yeah, that was it. That's what I
Yeah.
bring up. Add it to the
Coast
letter.
Guard's not.
Add it to the letter.
It seems like maybe obvious people to have on there,
State Park.
you know?
And the group that was supposed to get
Maybe
in
we work
was
together.
the assisted living once they came online.
Lodge.
Lodge, yeah, lodges. Because that was discussed that they would become just like BB, part of the committee.
And I know we coordinate with the county's emergency management center. But is there any need to tighten that up? Is we tied in properly and thoroughly enough for our specific needs? Is there anything that we have a pretty,
Oh, yeah.
we have, we participate in their drills and things, right?
They don't do many. Surprise, I mean, you heard it when we were at the tabletop, and we're one of the only communities, if not the only community that actually runs the tabletop exercise. But Robin and I have gone through, we did all of the NEMA training. We have a direct correspondence with Joe Thomas. So he sends all the updates and then we can forward them. Usually what happens, like when we went through the blizzards, we usually have a call between myself, Robin would attend, Anne Marie, Rick, Kenny, just so that we understood it. And then Joe Thomas actually does calls. So if there's something even from a hurricane standpoint or vice versa, we have those calls. But then we step back, we have like the joint act, we have DMAC, the Joint Action Agency on the power side. Which we're continuing to have discussions with them from a mutual aid perspective, since you have 8 members. So we're just trying to tighten everything up. That's one of the reasons, if you look at the mutual aid between Sussex County and the Lewes Board of Public Works, even during the discussion at the county council meeting, which Tom and I were at, we are one of the first that has anything like this within Sussex County or within the state,
Wow.
just basically between the county and the local government.
And the city established that initially, I guess,
What?
that coordination.
Well, we did, I'm talking on the mutual aid agreement.
Oh, usually,
Yeah,
but the coordination for the drills and things,
yes,
the
the
city,
city.
the city has
yeah,
led that.
That's all been through the Olson Group.
So
Our first one was like, it was a community wide. The second one we did specifically for Lewes, so the players were really people within Lewes. I think we did have state police, we had BB there, but we tried to keep it small.
So we feel pretty comfortable with that connection with county emergency management. Do we have any direct contact, or is there any need for tying in with coordinating with Delaware Emergency Management? The state organization. I know the Sussex County does, but is there any need for us to have direct?
I think we utilize it mutually between Joe Thomas and Sussex County and DEMA. So between the three of us as a community, I'm saying 3 would be like the board and the city together. That would be our kind of communication chain. Really would.
Do you ever do drills with them? Is the state ever involved in the county?
There was
the DEMA guide, people at the tabletop, wasn't there?
Yes,
Yeah, I was just saying, I thought they were.
but I don't think the state has done one.
Not that I've been. I think BB does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe just-
I've seen it, read about that.
Yeah. Joe, like you said, Joe communicates all the time. I think we have a pretty tight connection with him.
Joe, is he state?
No, that's county.
Oh.
Joe Tom.
And I think that's how the federal and the state wants it all. They don't want
Direct connection.
40
Yeah.
different
Just
people.
their stuff.
Zoom. They want it to be, okay, the municipalities go to Joe in Sussex County. You know, Kent County have the same thing. Then Joe will go to the state. And then the state will go to the federal. So it kind of keeps that, so everybody keeps in the loop and not everybody's doing their own little.
Does stuff come down from the state to the county and that does? Do we see that?
Normally that's not very good. That's how it funnels up and funnels down.
Okay.
Again, when we went through the NIM stuff, they talk about resources, you know, again, everybody's gonna be fighting for the same resource, so. You know, if we got 15 municipalities calling the state. You know, Joe might be coordinated from the county and he gets left out of the loop. So if they want that loop closed through the county, then go to the state.
Yeah.
Calls.
I
The
get-
state calls the county calls the municipality.
And I guess going down even further, I guess they coordinate directly with FEMA.
Yeah.
But does FEMA coordinate with county directly? Or
Because
It's all,
state,
all through, everything goes through the state?
yeah.
There's one state coordinator that coordinates with FEMA.
So everything comes through FEMA.
If there was a
FEMA to FEMA,
situation,
the County, the
There was a situation where the damages were here in Lewes and not Sussex County. Would we still have to go through Sussex County to get help from DEMA?
yes,
Yeah, you still use Joe.
It's still,
it's still the same hierarchy, but the bonus of that, look at the silver lining is Joe doesn't have to worry about the rest of the county.
Right.
He can focus all of the attention here.
and he would, I mean,
Right.
that's set up.
So
that would
take,
happen.
for example, May, the nor'easter that we got when the beaches eroded,
Yes,
you know, nothing inland was damaged. They spent all their time up and down Route 1. And they were here, they were on the ground. FEMA was here, the county was here. FEMA came in to visit with them. So it was, you saw it work then.
So there's nothing, that coordination. Other than building our, establishing, formalizing our committee. Looks like everything else is pretty straightforward. As we've mentioned, sewer and water, we got mutual aid agreements with the county. Both water and sewer. We have a cross connection with Tidewater. A backup.
Yeah, and-
Anything, does that include, that includes emergencies? That's what it's there for.
Yeah, I mean, when you open it up, she's open. And a prime example of this is, I know everybody's probably watched the news, everybody's seen Jackson,
Oh, yeah.
Mississippi.
Yeah.
It's one of those where you're in a situation where if we were put in that problem, where we would have issues at the wells themselves, we have the ability, it's very expensive, but at the time, you're not really worried about money, you turn the valve, you have supply. So.
And we're considering another one, new road area.
Yeah, we actually, we put a casing across the street and took advantage of when all the work was being done on the road and the roundabout was being put in, so that in theory, when that time comes, we can put a piece of 12-inch pipe down, run it all the way down and tie in with Tidewater again. Now, that one is used if the bridge crossing ever goes down and we don't have a redundant through the Miller farm, we could isolate that whole side of town who's on that main by closing the valve of the bridge and still get fed from the new roadside.
Yeah, because we do need to run to ground this issue of if we go and open the valve.
Yes,
Will
what
we
the
ever
re-
be able to return back?
yes, that is another one. I guess the common denominator would be like the discussion of what happened in Flint, Michigan, because you changed the biological content of the water or the chemistry of the water, which then had an impact of older pipes and what that would be. But the way that it's set up right now is that it would be treated water coming into our system. So
Is that a valve near the well field? The
Yes,
current one, the one
we have
that's-
a huge vault, and in that vault, there's a whole cluster of valves. But what it is if you're actually in the water treatment plant, the water comes in on the left-hand side from the wells, and then it gets treated and then runs through the clay valve and then back in the system.
Mhm.
This pipe actually comes up directly underneath. There's a directly underneath, just past where the treated water is, and then just funnels through. So you basically shut the valve, open this one.
As you're coming in the gate to the
Yeah.
well site.
Yeah, I've been on that.
It's on the
in that-
right hand,
in that
on the
area.
left hand side, the bulb there.
Thanks.
Talking about the Miller Farm, should we pursue talking to them to try to get a line over to that side of town?
Absolutely.
What's that big smile?
That's his ultimate goal. If
Oh,
he retires, he wants to call the Charlie O'Donnell line.
I didn't hear that. Oh, he was. Very funny.
We can put the block right on top.
Right on the valve, love the valve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've modeled it. And it gives advantages to the distribution system.
Yeah.
That you
Probably,
don't
yeah.
have to have. But yeah,
Because we were thinking about putting a tank over there, but we get that supply coming over there, that would be
yeah, very good.
from the new tank.
You know, I mean, and we've got a lot of homes that we're gonna serve between Tower Hill and Waterfront Preserve, but there's a lot more area out there that's within the board's wastewater service area that would probably would want water service at the same time.
Do we have any connections with them, Millers? You know, anybody that knows anybody?
Well, I know nothing, but I do know that it sprung up in July. I thought there was some interest, and I don't know where that came from. Maybe through the mayor.
Outside interest or it's internal?
No, it was a brief, when you're looking at it from a hydraulics standpoint, you're looking at how you can get to the other side. One is the Miller Farm, and it's direct. I mean, it splits from Canary Creek all the way up to Old Orchard. So it's the common, to get from one side to the other, you either go really far along or you go straight through.
So
Didn't Linda Miller have an interest or something? Or not?
She is not local, but it's a family farm. I don't think she's open to really development, so.
I think probably wouldn't want us to go directly across, but we could follow the
That's what-
property line or
That's what
something.
we were thinking along the Canary Creek side, but I need to look at it closer in terms of wetlands and so forth, but yeah, that's what we were thinking.
I mean, we should try to pursue that, going forward. Right now, I guess it's apparent that to get over to Tower Hill, we gotta come across Canary Creek down on New Road and back up. So it's coming all the way from the well field all the way around
What's the
town,
new tower?
right there near the well fields. About a couple years ago, Board of Public Works, the city, the county bought that farm in the corner there, Clay Road.
Yes.
We bought that and besides providing protection to our wells, wellhead area.
Yes.
We got a couple, was it 2 acres of land there?
2 acres, 200 by 200 square.
Yeah, one of them, for a water tower. Right against our well field. So that's in the planning stages.
But we had looked at putting a water tower out on New Road,
Yeah, that's what I
wells
was
out on New
wondering.
Road for pressure support. And it never made sense, or, I mean, we couldn't get enough land for the water tower, and the well field of the well out there is probably not.
We-
cost
We
effective.
And
mentioned
if you
putting,
have a connection to Tidewater, you absolutely needed fire flow. up
Yeah.
there.
Well, and the benefit that you have out there is everything that's built currently that's tied in or will be tied in, seemingly will be newer. So, for example, it's all HDPE going down, using
Great
HDPE
to see that.
instead of, cast iron, ductile iron that exists throughout town.
we were looking at putting a tank out there, which would be nice too.
Yeah.
But,
I remember seeing a model doing the treat, whether tower sufficient, we were a little worried about fire flow out that end.
Yeah.
Towards New Road.
we think about, putting a well and a tower out there would be great.
There's a big concern on the Canary Creek side of New Road from Denmark's perspective, from saltwater intrusion. And then the transmissivity, I can't even say, how do you say it, Tom? Yeah. That issue also, from looking at it from a heat map perspective, where the current wells are is, you couldn't have picked a better space. But as soon as you step out, it gets really tough to find a good piece of land.
And, of course, public objection to towers. We talked about the marsh. The new park.
Great Marsh.
Great Marsh.
Great Marsh.
Putting it in
It's
there.
Old Marsh.
Yeah, well,
Just the word got out, like the pressure came
Mm.
like crazy. Yeah, but well, I can understand, nobody wants a tower near their house.
But
paint it
there's,
green.
yeah, I was gonna say, there's
It's
two,
beautiful. I look at it in my bedroom window.
And it makes you happy.
Artesian
Well,
and
I see it.
Tidewater are putting
It's not there. but-
two huge towers down, off of Roxanne Road, and then one right outside of Dagsboro. They're both 1 million gallons apiece.
What was their problem with the asking for the water reduction? That was
I think it was
did we find out whether it was production or just capabilities of getting it there?
the article, I think, talked about, it wasn't necessarily production. I think it was a capacity
The
issue.
article didn't seem to know. I mean, the article was guessing, it sounded like. Did you know anything about?
I tell you, that tower's going up fast.
Yeah.
And it's right by the new BB South Coastal facility on the left-hand side. And then Artesian's putting a massive, I think it's a treatment facility and a tower, which is coming from like Indian River High School,
Mhm.
coming out towards 26th.
You mean, why do they need the tower? I would say increase the demand for all the development.
Over there, yeah.
No, I think I'm referring to is the recent, when they were asking people to conserve
Conserve
water.
water, yeah,
Tidewater.
so yeah, a week or something.
I don't know.
Are we in the drought? That was mentioned the other night. I've never heard that. It's never been in on
It came up
radio or,
morning.
oh, it was mentioned the other night.
Sorry. The math. So I believe the official status of a drought is 30% below the average. But they typically don't do a 2-day average, they do a monthly average. So in July, we ended up, the average is like 7 inches of rain, we ended up with 7 inches of rain. We got it over 3 days. So when you get that quick inundation, it evaporates, it all runs off, it doesn't soak in. So you're in a drought. Even though the number looks the same, you're in a drought. It has to do with, depth of the water table, the moisture content of the soil and all of that. We're in a drought. Look at the corn and the soybean.
Yeah.
So
We're in a drought.
So they
Yeah,
came
yeah,
up
we
with
got-
that.
yeah.
So we went out
Watching
and looked at it.
It's New Jersey, but they didn't let it drought there all with Massachusetts. They never mentioned Delaware.
So there's enough spots because they go by county or whatever, or by state. We've got enough rainfall events quickly to not really qualify, but I mean, just like last night or Saturday, Salisbury got 3 inches of rain in an hour.
Yeah.
Seaford got 0, 20 miles,
We didn't get any here.
right? And last night they got another 2 inches in North Salisbury and it moved across. There been several times Cambridge and Easton have gotten hail and I've got nothing at all.
Evidently Blockhouse Pond is way down.
Yeah.
I hadn't noticed that.
Charlie went to see it. He said how
Yeah,
many
14
inches
inches below.
Really?
below the table? Yeah.
And that's
Well,
not a problem that can be engineered,
Yeah.
to figure out. That's a problem where there's not enough rainwater. Plus, thinking the groundwater is down because it's also fed by springs underneath. Not just rainwater around.
But we had a ton of heat all through July and the nights never cooled off enough for it to breathe. When your nights are at 75 and 78 and the dew point's at 78,
Mhm.
nothing has a chance to recover. You can hit that 95 during the day, but get to 65 at night and get that little dew point down, then it's okay, but when it just continually bakes, even all night long.
And it's not just around here, it's nationwide, it's worldwide.
I was saying that they've been talking about the drought from Massachusetts and New Jersey, but they never came across the bay to say we were in drought.
Well, I mean, the stations are at airports, and if the airport gets enough rain, then it doesn't qualify. They're moving out, so. Yeah. But we're dry.
All right, well, we were on the mutual aid, and the last one, I guess, is electric. Could you describe how we work through DMAC?
So DMEC is our joint action agency, in which consists of 8 members, including ourselves. And what DMEC does is they are power supplier. They buy wholesale. Obviously, we have the interconnection with Delmarva Power, but we buy, like, we have a stake in a wind farm up in Pennsylvania, natural gas fired plant in Ohio, various solar facilities. But what we have started to have discussions at
So
DMEC
just to make sure, that's an organization of all the municipal power companies in the state.
Yes,
DMAC.
yes. So what we've started to have a discussion on is DMEC actually holding mutual aid agreements on behalf of the members. What it does is it allows them to designate where the mutual aid goes. So for example, if on the coast, there's more of a fear of mutual aid issues because you have storms that come off, whether it be nor'easters or hurricanes. The western part of the state, Seaford, wherever it may be, they may not be as concerned, just hypothetically. If DMEC holds all of the mutual aid agreements, they can designate, so if there's a storm on the western part, they can send it. If there's a tornado up in Dover, they can send it. So we're thinking about going down that route as an organization to help us be flexible. And it helps us too, because we're in a very tough market from a hiring perspective, from every aspect, but linemen are very hard to come by. I mean, we were in a meeting where in California, they're paying astronomical numbers to get people to come to California to be linemen. And so we started a joint lineman training yard. So we actually have a group out of Tennessee that's going to be doing lineman training, so we can hire kids that are younger or adults that are younger and actually send them through the entire process of training, and it be all in-house to our members, which is a benefit.
So you should probably talk a little bit about the relationship between DMAC and the APPA as far as mutual aid goes.
Yeah, so then we tap into the American Public Power Association, which allows us, it's basically every public power organization has the ability to join, but then you can kind of come together collectively across the entire nation.
Again, that's an organization of municipal.
Yeah. Only public power.
That doesn't include co-ops or public electric. So we have them, but we're obviously we're connected to Delmarva because it provides transfers through Delmarva to get to us. But the co-op, do we have any coordination with them? Is there any need to? Since they're the ones that border us all the way around. They've always been our competitors, but so is Tidewater.
What I would say, the biggest thing that I think we need to have a discussion on, which there are discussions that will be happening later this upcoming month,
There.
is the possibility for redundancy of the electric system from the generation. So that would be from Delmarva.
Well, the other thing that the co-op did talk about was a pooled inventory for critical assets. And it's another sensitive issue, but they have approached DMAC and us about pooled inventories.
Transformers, et cetera. I mean, the tropics are heating up. So I foresee something coming up, but and it's not even joking. In my feeling, it's going to happen, but you're one step away from a supply chain that is at its worst in a while to it being even lower. I mean, you're talking transformers that are not only 10, 20, 30% higher when you buy them, to ETAs that are 26, 32, 52. Transformer fiberglass pads, 52 plus. One storm.
And, you know, some of it is due to supply chain issues, and some of it is,
Material.
it's like, toilet paper at the beginning of COVID. I don't think people were pooping more, but all of a sudden we couldn't get toilet paper. And, in this case, it's utilities, including us, building up inventories, which is drawing down.
On the supply chain.
But
Yeah.
so, you know, it's, yes, it's prudent, but it's self-defeating to a certain extent.
Especially through all that ARPA money at people for
Yes.
public
Right.
health and public services, they started gathering the
Yeah.
poker chips.
You're also, yeah, and you're absolutely
got
right from that
that.
perspective, because you had all these.
Mhm.
Now,
And the
building-
dollars were gonna expire, so you had to use dollars, so it was not, you just couldn't stash it in your operating budget and say, well, we'll deal with this later. The line was set, yeah.
Does the co-op stop providing transformers, right? Is that still happening?
What they did is I wouldn't say they stopped, what they did is they paused. And what they're doing is every week, they're having a conversation on how many they'll release based off the inventory they receive. They have bought so many transformers that they review it every week to see what truckload comes in. And based off what truckload comes in, they send out who will be connected the following week. So from a developer standpoint, you get on a list, and when it's your time, it's your time.
Because just because they're ordered doesn't mean they're gonna be delivered.
No,
There are people ordering 100 and you get 3.
yeah, that's.
And then, from what I've heard also, they don't necessarily know, I mean, they may place an order for, you know, multiple different transformers, and then when the truck arrives, you figure out which ones you got.
Right.
They may not be your priorities, but they were what was available.
We'll give them some. So, people give.
Is there any truth, Austin, in what developer from Waterfront Preserve was saying that they're coming from Mexico, but you gotta get a full truckload? Is there some truth in that versus just like a partial order or something?
We have a PO in for the exact same ones,
Gotcha.
and co-op has started to use them too. Because it's the only one that actually has, one, a realistic time frame, and two, they're meeting all expectations. They say 26 weeks, they're in by 26 weeks. You're paying more, and it's booked in, it basically, they bake it into the cost of the transformer. But it's, you know, we sat down and we talked about it internally, and the issue is that how long do you wait?
Yeah.
Because we were getting quotes anywhere from 52 to 104 weeks originally.
Yeah.
And then you had, and there's a big push on the domestic side to change up the building specs, basically changing up the material that's used currently to build them to increase domestic production versus lowering tariffs to get material from China, from the Ukraine, Russia. And that hasn't moved. They thought it was going to come out in the IRA, but I don't think there was much movement.
No,
What I
actually,
understood.
I heard, the last I saw in the industry is
They
the
denied.
federal government denied it.
Yes,
So this is the silicone, the grain-oriented silicone steel that's used in laminates. And there was it increases the performance of the transformer by about 7%, you know, depending upon design. And they wanted to relax that so they could go back to the old style steels. But that would mean putting in assets for the long term that are 7% less efficient. And the EPA and I think the Department of Energy came back and nixed it.
So is any of it being produced
domestically,
domestically?
I think there's one
There's
place.
there's one manufacturer, one steel producer left in the United States that had upgraded to this. And everything else comes from overseas. In very, very stable places now, so you have nothing to
Yeah,
worry
like
about.
Russia.
Kind of the Ukraine and
Yeah.
Russia.
Easy use.
I get it. I get it.
Seriously.
I get the geopolitical problem.
They're collaborative.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're playing nice in the sandbox.
yeah.
The amount, and I don't always, but it's like 60% of all of the silicone or grain oriented silicone steel comes from those three countries. And there are some more stable places, but
All right, item 7, I think, we've talked about that. But particularly, George and Lynch, do we need anybody else lined up?
Well, we're working, so we have Sussex County Mutual Aid, which covers water and waste. The electric side, we're in discussions, with, well, we also had a contract with Asplin to do some tree trimming on, circuit 1 and 3. 2 and 4 would be next. We're gonna wait till next fiscal
But
year.
I'm talking for emergencies, to have contracts with these people to come in and do things. That,
To actually have a contract with George and Lynch or to,
well, George and Lynch, I'm not as much concerned about because we have through the county. Hopefully we'll have that, if they're available, like you're mentioning. But is there other things like Ashland say, if trees are down, getting a pre-agreement with them to come in, pay a premium for it or something, or
that's one of those that you go back and forth on whether or not you want to utilize DMEC's ability to say, does DMEC have a contract? Absolutely, does DMEC have a contract with?
well, even not the sewer and water industry. I mean, is there anybody else we should be talking with?
I
mean-
lost track. Has the city completely abandoned the contract with Bartlett? Because Bartlett had come on, was on board for a while.
They've got well, they use the services of Bartlett, Sussex. And I think 2 other trees and the companies, and they bring them in to bid on specific jobs, at least from a Parks and Rec standpoint. And Janet's the one managing the tree trimming throughout the city. Because I was just with her recently, and so they come and they give a bid on specific jobs, and then they contract that work.
Yeah, because that was struck me as a little strange, the fact that we're using the Splendor now. And the city's using Bartlett. for
And
street.
Sussex. And I think there's another in addition to Sussex tree. So it depends on, whether the bid comes in low or high, or, their workload and other factors. And their ability to get to it in a timely fashion if it's something that's urgent.
So do you see a need for any other agreement? Emergency response
I mean, really, you
for any of the
coordinate
utilities?
fuel, that's one that you could work on, because fuel for all the generators, backup generation. Equipment, again, you could probably work with the county, bypass pumps, backup generators, portable units.
Fuel's a good one. Good to have some agreements with that.
I think the fuel portion is in the cities. There was a reference, because I think Chatham was talking about that also.
Pep up, I think, one of the fire department. And it's an owner.
Maybe another one we could coordinate with. That's another one we could coordinate with some, the fuel supplier.
Mhm.
We buy directly though, don't we?
Mhm.
Ours.
Yeah.
We use the same as the city.
Not,
I thought the answer was no,
uh,
or it historically was no. And we also supply, the fire department and the ambulance
with fuel.
with fuel. I mean, they pay us
Yeah.
for it, but they
Reimburses
use
our
our
tank.
tank.
Okay, anything else that we had to think about that? There's any other vendor that we should have pre-agreements with?
The only thing I can think about is not so much from a vendor perspective, but to have a certain amount of inventory, a certain amount of valves.
Well, that's-
I mean, we do, but it's not like
That's the next,
you get we
I
have poles, we got transformers, but you get hit by a category 3 hurricane. I don't know if we have everything.
How about places like, the housing, stuff like that?
heavy equipment.
You'd rather they come here. Oh,
I don't know. Between both of us, we have pretty equipment rich.
What would, like East Coast or Davidson's house movers?
They just got, they got.
Bob doesn't move houses anymore, but
Well,
he's still
I mean,
got he's still got his equipment,
They
yeah.
still do occasionally. I'm just saying. In
His brother still
one
does.
hurricane,
Yeah.
most closely associated, with, there were houses in the middle of the street. Lots of things that you.
Intact.
The biggest one is maybe a transmission district, or on the transmission.
What about you?
69 kV.
Sorry.
You're,
What about utility subcontractors? And, you know, I'm up in Pennsylvania, I'm aware of a bunch of them. That contract with like subcontract Pico and companies like that. Do we have
you see.
whether it's gas lines, whether it's water lines, whether it's,
Yeah, that was one that I was saying, like, if you had a contractor to run 69. Because if you lost a transmission coming from 69 all the way into, or from the metering substation all the way into our substation. Our guys couldn't run transmission.
But we can go to DMAC for that.
You could, but DMAC doesn't have people that do it. They would have to contract it out.
like Henkel?
Well, I'm thinking, then, I'm sorry.
Sorry, thinking company like Henkel that does, you know, up in Pennsylvania, they do a lot of subcontracting for utilities and might not be a bad idea to reach out to. There's a couple others too. I have a sister-in-law who works in that industry, so I could get.
Well, I'm just wondering, you know, that since the big stuff, why is DMEC getting relationships with them for emergency?
That's
Maybe
what
they
we're
are.
in the discussions of now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're gonna tie in with that, if we need them.
But that's the-
Obviously, DMAC has got 69 kV stations, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And higher voltage, so.
The biggest one is that and this is where Charlie and I discussed this, when you talk, like, taking advantage of what the county has with their T&M, is that, does it make sense for us, between the city and the board, to have a T&M? Because if you're hit, I mean, the county has their own infrastructure.
Right.
And their infrastructure is much wider spread out. Does it actually make sense for us to think about having it, bidding it out and having a T&M?
With
Because,
the contract.
yes,
It's what, and when, well, you mentioned that, Barbara, about your knowledge of subcontractors in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. I mean, I'm just really thinking out loud, but just like, if it was emergency only on call, would we reach out to those elsewhere that aren't going to be affected or in demand around here? Go to Western Maryland or Western Pennsylvania, even anywhere in Pennsylvania. To get some company, I mean, we have a whole bunch of wastewater treatment plant contractors that we're aware of that might be interested in signing an emergency on call, I don't know. But then they'd be on call and they could get here, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully get here, but
it's the beauty of a T&M. The T&M helps you in the time
Yeah.
of when you have small things come up, and if you have a big thing, you're first on the list.
yeah, the T&M that you and I've been discussing is more for our everyday projects that we've been putting out for bid, so we don't end up with. You know, it's hard to disqualify a contractor. So you really have to go through a lot to disqualify.
But that's how the county's structured. County's structured as a T&M
Yeah.
for those circumstances, but then for emergency, and Ocean City does the same. Pick the phone up. You may have scheduled stuff that you do like in the fall, you may do 3 street rehabs.
Yeah.
Same contractor does it, but emergency happens,
They're there.
you're on the list.
Oh, list, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, because having a separate T&M contract that's with the same companies that the county's got,
Yeah,
it's kind of, I mean, you're gonna be,
you're working against yourself
It's-
there.
there's
But you're-
only a finite number of resources.
Right.
so.
You're saying you're expanding a portfolio,
Here's-
meaning if you don't have
Here's
it.
the question I have with, so the county has it with George and Lynch, and you have it with the county. Is when George and Lynch was qualified for that, did they have to show capacity for the county minus the municipalities, or the county including you guys? Because if it includes you guys, then you're already covered.
I
If
think,
it's just the county and they qualified and then you attached on to the county, that might be a burden on
And
what they
and
qualify.
that's what happened, because we only signed the county mutual aid last week.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
the June.
So they didn't qualify with
Yeah.
the hours and manpower.
how-
If something were to happen to the whole county, you might be number two.
That's why I said it's like an insurance policy, right? That's here, that's in the left pocket.
And it could
And
be
you wanna put something
Georgia
in the right
Lynch is, stretched too thin. Might not even.
maybe a Teal or somebody else would be
Well,
another,
That's
Yeah.
where you start to think about. There's benefits from just strictly T and M, there's benefits, and then there's benefits to. You have that in place, and when you pick up the phone, somebody answers. It's just like on the beach side, the water table is 3 or 4 feet and the mains are 8 feet down.
I would have to read this more closely, but we probably have to bid those things out too.
Yeah, the county did.
Yeah, I know they do, we'd probably have to do the same damn thing. We couldn't just go to Teal and sign one.
Yeah, it would be a process.
Does the process include consideration for like minority owned businesses, that kind of stuff?
I haven't read that thing closely
Yeah,
enough, but I'm
yeah.
sure there's some of that in there.
Because sometimes that can offset the price.
Yeah, that's why it's
Yeah.
important to have
Yeah.
somebody on the board understands this kind of thing in
Yeah,
advance.
yeah.
Typically, our board and city funded projects don't have any goals for MDBE requirements, but anytime you get any kind of federal or state funding, there's goals that you have
Yeah.
to show that you tried your hardest to, like the contractors have to send out advertisements to, and then they send us the companies and they actually show us the letters that they send out to various DBE. But that's only on federal and state funding projects.
Yeah, so does that apply under emergency relief, emergency declarations?
Well, that's why they recommend again that you have those things set up in advance, so you've got all that covered. Those people.
What is that you have there, Press?
That was the,
Specific to emergency situation?
Yeah.
Okay.
disaster recovery,
Yeah.
but again, it's mostly about the FEMA and HUD
Yeah.
and other programs and what you can do, and the various programs they have and what they cover and what percentage of the returns that you get from them for like mitigation work and that's.
Yeah.
But it's quite involved.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different programs. There's a lot of different programs they have. You have to know each one,
Yeah.
what records it use and all that. You're welcome to get a copy of it if you're interested. Sure.
I am, yeah.
Who handles gas lines in case of emergency?
Just
Chesapeake, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a franchise from the
Franchise,
city.
city franchise, yeah.
The next one is, you began to mention it, item 8, securing the necessary critical replacement parts and equipment. And I guess we should prepare a list of what they are, then begin securing them as they become available. We don't have much of a backlog for the treatment plant alone, do we?
That's
Yeah,
one of the goals was to, well, one is we're trying to put bypass on the pump station so that we can utilize bypass capability. But coming through with a systematic change out so that more pumps are interchangeable with each one of the pump stations, so that you don't have one pump that's where one station. You got 27 stations, you need to have a pump for each one.
And portable emergency generators and things like that from station to station. We don't have that, so.
But we actually had it on the agenda for the last meeting, which we're confirming. We do have a Godwin bypass pump, which can be used for all the stations that have bypass capability, and then portable generators again, another possibility.
Yeah, and I had talked to Hans, to find out the sizing of the emergency generators they have relative to whether we wanted to procure the one that we had. And Hans's feeling is that preferentially, as long as there's bypasses in, the diesel powered pumps are better. Because they take out, you may bring a generator in, but if it's the switchgear or something else in the electrical side that's failed, you're still at the same point. And that the bypass pumps would be, are the more holistic solution. Rather than,
The generator.
but he said, what did he say? You remember, Russell, was it 60 kW or 75 kW?
You talking about Hans?
Yeah. I said,
60, I think is a
yeah,
big
I
one.
think 60 is what they had. So they do have one. But his preference would be
Bypass.
a bypass
Bypass
pump
pump.
and putting in bypass lines,
And we're starting
which
to do that.
kind of
so-
makes sense. I mean, I'm Charlie, I don't know if you have any feelings.
I agree. It sounds good, yeah. You're doing the right thing.
Are we now trying to standardize pumps for the various pumping stations as we replace them?
We're at the very beginning stages of doing, it, yes, but it's a great idea. Because so many pump stations are relatively the same size. That you could at least get it into where you could just need to trim down the color or something like that, but it's the same.
Yeah. So like the one going in at the Watertown Preserve. Is that close to anything else we have?
Most likely, yes. Because it's a relatively small one and you have a lot of.
All right, well, I guess that under not item 8, we should prepare a list of what we think are critical. Start working it down to implement that. Okay, and then number 9, identify, establish emergency staff housing and supplies.
No, I haven't. Say it one more time.
Yeah. Let's see, identify and establish the housing and supplies for emergencies. We have some stuff already, right?
Yeah, it's all in my
Closet.
closet. Lots are in my closet. We secured 2. Right now we're gonna have 2 if they ever get delivered. Satellite phones. We're looking at switching over to FirstNet. We're gonna do a pilot program with that, see how that works. But
How about water and food,
That's-
canned goods and that kind of stuff?
all goes to where you're gonna store it.
Yeah,
Because right now it's tough because storage is, and we talked about it on Monday.
yeah. Okay.
Here,
What
put-
does Red Cross
Here.
do with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my closet.
It's in cases of emergency.
Yeah.
Pass them down the other end.
I'm
They're
Yeah,
good.
Good.
Good. Dark chocolate.
Hey, Chris, I gotta go to another meeting.
Sure.
But.
I appreciate you coming.
Yeah,
this week,
thank you
Charlie.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. But just for the funding part of it, which is your last item, just keep in mind that the city is beginning to, create some sort of resiliency fund that.
Well, that's a little advanced, but before you leave, I just got answer from Anne Marie, in October. Before mayor and council is gonna be the ICC. Code for adoption, the 2121 version,
That's the 130 with it, yeah.
so, IBC, and it's gonna be the entire suite of ICC. Codes
Okay,
that is gonna be proposed for adoption in October.
Could you,
Okay.
could you copy
Yeah,
that,
sure.
send it to Charlie?
thanks, Sharon.
Yep.
See you guys.
See ya.
See you, Charlie.
Actually, you pull that down off the EPPA website,
I'll
Well, this is,
send them the link.
this is a presentation with all. Oh, yeah, you're right. No problem.
They-
Yeah.
they probably-
Got
Send it to
that.
everybody.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Got that.
I'm still trying to find the one I promised you on polls.
Yeah, right.
I can't find that meeting on the website.
Really.
I'm not
Oh,
sure.
I went on the website. I had a devil of a time trying to find these,
Yeah, it's,
so. If you can't find them on the website.
Alright.
You have a copy. The first one, I mean, the 10th one, identify potential mitigation recovery funding That's what this is all about. As I said, they are very particular about going out for bids and meticulous record keeping about what you spent things on or they're eligible or not. It brings all that kind of stuff down. So somebody in the organization should be at least have read this and maybe understand it. So when an emergency occurs, that we can move quickly on it because there's a
Yeah, I
lot.
don't know if you
there's a lot
touched
in
on
there.
it at the national, but the engineering conference I went to, there were 2 cities or municipalities that got burned because everything got rejected
Mm.
because they didn't jump through all the hurdles. And
They didn't dot every
But
I
they-
and cross every T, yeah.
but they had gone to FEMA and asked and
Oh,
And,
again and
and
again.
it was the bureaucracy, and one of them is appealing, or was appealing at that point, because they missed the deadline by like a month. Because of the lack of responsiveness from FEMA. And, you know. It was horrendous, some of the stories.
Well, if you know how to play the game, evidently, FEMA, they gave examples of projects. And of about 6 or 8 projects they listed in here, 2 of them undergrounding electric facilities. Before disaster mitigation that they got funded for. And one of them is for Palm Beach. Florida, and they really need the money. 8.5 million for them and then. The other one.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because Brett, maybe you can add, they had talked about the fact that the guidelines have been loosened to allow for preemptive work rather than
Oh,
disaster
Yeah,
recovery.
Maryland started paying for burying lines a decade ago.
Who gets the money in Palm Beach of all places?
Yeah, really.
Getting it,
That's kind of like waving in
Just
your
gotta
face.
write the grant properly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're.
Miami-Dade County get pumping station generators. So these are all preemptive. So if you know how to play the game, evidently, you get it. I'm sure political connections help too. But right now we have a president from Delaware, so maybe that would help. I don't know. That's a hurt.
And local acres ought to be in bigger shape.
Yeah.
I don't know, because my local FEMA handler lives in Louisiana.
Is that right?
She's working out of the Philadelphia office, living in Louisiana. And then there was some guy the other day that I was on the, with that was in a windstorm. Working for FEMA, the Philadelphia office.
Really?
He was in
So,
Dubai.
so you wonder why there's a month delay
Yeah.
on responses.
So, I guess, correct to follow on, is that where should we be, or who's best to guide us on what we should be, who might be able to apply for grants preemptively for?
Well, this talks about how you're supposed to do it. So.
No, but I'm
Somebody
talking, guide,
practical.
or, you know, who should we be going to? Does GMB have the expertise?
I have a
or-
little bit. Lean on FEMA themselves to some extent, although my knowledge of things, when I ask them questions, their typical response is, yeah, sure, you can apply. Yes, I
Yeah.
can apply for, I can apply
But
for
should I waste
anything.
my time and money and
Right.
resources doing
Right.
it? Yeah.
Do I have an
Yeah.
opportunity of being successful
Yeah.
in the application?
But
Is the
maybe what you
question.
need is a list of things you'd like to do.
Well,
But yeah, a
interesting,
priority
You
list
know,
of,
Yeah.
I mean, I once went to a state agency and said, here's what I want to do. And I looked at, turned around to all these horrified faces. And he said, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Right.
But, and then they told him what I did.
It was more realistic too.
Well, this workshop was presented by Ernst and Young. So there's 4 other people that gave the workshop.
that was one of the things I would do in Maryland is if they would allow me, I would apply to the state. Because the clearinghouse for some of this stuff, like, you know, the block grant things were reviewed by SHA, Maryland Historic Trust, you know, people that were involved in all sorts of different capacities in different agencies. So maybe somebody saw it and went, "Well, it doesn't fit this, but I got some money that might be good for that." So as an engineer, I talk a lot. For an engineer, I just have conversations with people all the time. Hey, I got this project, I got this project. And just start them working for me and network and see where it goes. There are a lot of time, I mean, 90% of the time I get nowhere. But if 10% of the time I can be successful and just sit down talking to people, then it works.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should engage Sergeant London from the electrical side and on whether they have any insight into what these grants might be.
It wouldn't-
I'm not sure. That's why I was asking for, who's Ballywick? There was a woman I used to talk with up in FEMA, Philadelphia. I can't remember her name right now. It's in my other book. But she was very helpful, but then she retired.
I know from the floodplain side of the city, I mean, I talked with David Ward, he's the state coordinator for FEMA. Speaking to someone that can be back to call. Charlie Baker is also with FEMA that I dealt with when we were going through our recertification. So I have several contacts through FEMA that might be able to.
I remember, I know earlier on, Senator Hanson's committee, that there was some talk of some mitigation into that. But I've not had a chance to go back and actually look through the final bills to see if anything's in there. Are you familiar with anything from the state side?
So the state is slowly working on rolling it out, trying to figure out how to address it. I would say have the conversation with Morgan now, potentially have the conversation with Jim Sullivan or like pre-disaster mitigation monies. They haven't finalized the dollar value on that, but there's going to be fix it before it breaks type money. Bury the power lines before they're gone type mitigation money coming around. Heard anywhere from like 50 million per state to 200 million per state. And, of course, the noisy ones and the big boys are going to get a lot of it, but there's going to be pocket change because it's not going to work out to 200 million for 3 projects.
I mean, that's why it was a big push, because the state and it was, a left hook, got $1 billion. 0 of it went to any sort of infrastructure. They pushed it all on the federal government, which is the BIL.
Mhm.
And the BIL it follows the federal government's push, which is for like lead and copper. So there's heavy funding in there, but we were prepared to go to the state for funds that came through the ARPA, which was 925 billion, 926. And none of it was designated for utilities, infrastructure at all.
Wow.
Yet they're still trying to figure out how to spend it
I know.
and where it's going. I've had somebody on the hook for Laurel for 8 months and still don't have an answer or a dollar amount.
Even for Laurel, that's kind of surprising, because I mean, I thought part of it was the focus on underserved communities and broadband expansion.
It is, but I mean, the state couldn't get out of their own way. And then you go out of session for a while and nothing happens and it bureaucracy. Everybody pictured the ARPA money completely differently.
Yeah.
There are a lot of communities that have switched over water meters to touchless readers. Okay, they finally moved into 1990 with all this, but there are other communities that have already done that are politely say struggling how to do it because they're at the forefront of being on top of their game. And the guidance was horrific. Public health and safety. Good luck. Here's
All right, we've got to flesh out some of these things. I'll work on that for the next meeting. The other thing that maybe we can get into the next meeting. Policies and positions that we recommend the board take going forward. I mean, like I've mentioned in the past, maybe we should be maybe supporting EVs, solar, wind, things that we feel that maybe are not things that we operate, but things that we want to encourage to minimize the need for mitigation. So you can think on that of what policies could this board, being an environmental board, as far as I'm concerned, start thinking about and recommending, and maybe put together programs to implement them.
That Great Marsh Park, we could turn it into big solar.
Yeah, and when we're
Yeah. Yeah, right.
we park EVs in there too.
Do you want to lead the public relations?
Yeah. I've already thrown myself under the bus on the parking thing, so I'm not volunteering.
Yeah, you like took that on. didn't you?
I know, what everybody's like, thinking.
Yeah,
When's your next? Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. So when's your next meeting there? Mr. Lee?
let's see.
I'm gonna be out of the country in September for a little bit, which I'm excited about.
Where are we going?
Going to Canada to visit my cousins
Oh, where?
and en route visit my brother to torment him as he turns 65. Yes, so it's we're really looking forward to it. Haven't seen them since 2019, so yeah.
How's the 28th? Say.
That's your board meeting. You
Oh,
don't wanna do this
It is
year.
our board meeting, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't wanna do it.
How about October, first week of October?
That's pretty good for me. Let me see
I'll
what
be
I
back.
got. Yeah, I'm pretty open except for Tuesday. Any particular day? Wednesday, the 5th? You want to do a morning? Again, 9:30?
5th of October.
5th of October? At 9:30, not 9 o'clock, 9:30. Maybe that's, I was thinking for today.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Don't worry, Chris, I'll send you a reminder.
Please.
If someone sends me a reminder.
I'll blame it on you if I,
I understand that sequential reminder system. Yeah.
so 9:30 on the 5th.
Federal call today is-
All right.
Thank you.